Oh yeah.
No surprise there, with my pal, and we ended up getting a coffee and stuff.
Okay.
And I think I must have an invisible sign on my forehead saying, "Please talk to us, we're lonely."
Oh right.
So I had to put up with this old dude talking about his job and like
Okay.
all this about get me started about the virus and all that. And I was just like,
Oh,
and you're like, oh my God.
not what you want after a bank holiday weekend.
No. So I end up going for another walk.
Okay. To recover from that traumatic experience.
Yeah.
I thought you genuinely, I thought you would usually welcome chats, walking chats.
Well, it
Just
depends
not from this guy.
it depends who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
It went on about otters and everything, and it was just
Oh,
like random.
yeah. Not what you. No, I mean, I guess the way that you could look at it, if he was somebody that's been on their own for too long, maybe you
Yeah.
made his day.
Yeah, that's that. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Cool. I'm going to give this a couple more minutes and see if anybody else is joining. I know a couple of people want the replay, so already recording. Well done, me. So before we get into it, how was your weekend, everybody? How did you find the bank holiday? You can take yourself on mute, jump in, and feel free to jump in. And give me a bit of an update on like how you personally experienced Easter, the bank holiday, because I think it's one that is, again, another holiday that revolves around kind of, to a degree, food, much like Christmas. So I think it was important to do this coaching call today just to kind of help give some perspective after maybe a little bit more indulgent, but also this can be applied any time that you might, it doesn't necessarily have to be a big event. It could literally be you've been out for the weekend, one thing's led to another, you ended up eating out, going to a different restaurant that might not have been your choice, or through social pressures or peer pressure ended up eating something that you didn't want and then feeling really groggy for it the next day, then beating yourself up about it, kind of getting on that repetitive cycle of I'm purposely trying to change my habits so I get a better outcome, being dragged into certain things which are fun at the time and obviously you enjoy at the time, but inevitably then you feel guilty for afterwards. So how are you all feeling after the Easter weekend? Emma, we'll start with you, seeing as though you're already off mute.
I mean, I sort of messaged you because I felt myself starting to sort of sabotage myself.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily just Easter weekend. My cycle's all over the place anyway, so it's kind of come a bit earlier. And I don't know, I just wanted hot cross buns and like anything that, like, but I beat myself up about it and didn't have it in the end. But I have had a couple of days where it's been a lot higher. And then another example today, I kind of got back on it really quickly yesterday and ate all right. And then today I've just been to a cafe and had a coffee and scone. And I don't understand why all of a sudden I'm doing this, because like I say, I've had a really good time and enjoyed it and everything. And I'm trying to sort of get back into the mode. But yeah, it's kind of trying not to feel guilty about it, I suppose, because that's how you've always felt.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think that it's quite, for some people, we're all going to experience like these kind of situations in different ways, but for some people it's better to just go for it on the Easter weekend, like have whatever you want. If that's hot cross buns for breakfast, then do it, and give yourself like a window of, after like the bank holiday Monday, right, that's me back to my good habits, because I know that's what makes me feel good, and set that boundary for yourself, because otherwise it can escalate and can continue. And I think Sarah might be watching this back on the video, but this is something that we've spoken about a lot, that there's been situations where when you tell yourself you can't have something, like in that moment of that craving, I can't have this, I can't have hot cross buns, I can't have the scone, all these things, when we deprive ourselves of that, it's going to keep nagging at you until eventually you give in. And if it's something that you want in that moment, the context is right, you might be out with a friend having a coffee and you want something to go with it, have it, and then move on from it. And that's what today's coaching call really is all about. It's about not feeling guilty or having food remorse, because it really takes away from the experience then. And you sitting down, having a coffee with your friend, having a nice chat, you know, having a scone without thinking, oh, this is something that's bad for me, you know, that experience in itself is something that you're probably going to value, like maybe even subconsciously. So then to feel guilty for it afterwards, it almost makes the event pointless. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of come back to that at the end as well, Emma, because I want to run through a couple of things first. But I think I briefly, well, I've seen Jen and Kate, I've seen your end of week reviews anyway, but typically, how do you feel you manage the weekend? We'll start with Jen, because I know you've had a couple of things going on.
Yeah, so for me, Easter probably wouldn't have been a thing. I'm not sort of too bothered about that and the bank holiday, but it was my birthday. Yeah. And we'd spoken about it beforehand, and I'd sort of gone, you know what, it's a couple of meals. I'll be good for my breakfast and lunches, and then teas and in evenings can be a bit more of a I'm out, let's just have something nice, let's have a treat. And I'd sort of gone, right, that was it. But then, even though I'd decided beforehand that was what I was going to do, and it didn't really matter what it tracked at, I still felt rubbish at the end of it. So for me, it was more like, even if I allow myself, or I've told myself beforehand that you're going to do something different, I don't know whether for me, whether it's just because of like my gut insensitivities and how bloated and rubbish I literally feel when I don't eat right. So it's physically as well as mentally, and so I don't know whether one has an impact on the other, or which leads which, I don't know.
So it's a combination of both, really, isn't it? But I think, you know, you said there that you had decided that this weekend was going to be one that you didn't deliberately track. You knew that you've been consistent and you'd been adhering to the process for you know, consistently for the last 9 weeks now. And actually this one weekend is, you know, this kind of comes back to what I say all the time to you, is that what we're doing most of the time is what matters. Now, these kind of occasions they're very small amounts of time if you think of it in the grand scheme of things. And yes, the knock-on effect of maybe having something that doesn't necessarily agree with your digestive system and has a knock-on effect is going to make you feel terrible, but we can't let that take away from the experience that you had, whether that was with friends or that was with family or whatever it is. Now, you know, it doesn't always have to be, you know, to have fun, you don't have to have food and alcohol, you know, there's obviously many other ways that you can, but at the same time, it's a big part of it and our social circles. So yes, you might feel like crap today. However, I'm going to walk you through like getting back into your system, going back to basics, and how you will start to realize, and I'm hoping that this is going to give you all some confidence that you can have those situations and those occasions, and, you know, you can really go for it with whatever you fancy, and know that your foundational habits are so solid that when you get back into your normal routine, it might take you 3 days, 5 days, 7 days to get back into feeling how you were, which really, you know, you might think, what, for 1 day of, you know, eating different food, it's going to cost me 7 days to get back to feeling back to normal. But then you get to decide, is it worth it? You know, for a lot of people, and I personally think it is worth it, because you're having experiences, you get to enjoy things, and, you know, you're not always then in like the camp of I must eat healthy 365 days a year and like this is me and this is my routine. That you can still be like that healthy person and still have a good balance with indulging if you want to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we will kind of go through that, but if you've got any questions throughout as well, obviously just jump on. Katie, I know that you've had a couple of other things going on, and maybe like this hasn't been such a big event for you, but I think again in the future this is probably something that you can use over Christmas time, birthdays, that sort of stuff, but just kind of give us an idea of how you found the Easter weekend.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I don't really think it's kind of come late for me, because I met a friend from work today and went for a walk in the park, all good intentions, and then I've come back to the house and my boyfriend's mum and dad have dropped off Easter eggs, and I kind of had it in my head that like after yesterday it'd be like, right, that's it, reset kind of thing. And I have just been eating chocolate and I've got terrible period pain. And do you know what? I don't really care, because I've realised now what it is, why I put weight back on. It's because I get to kind of like a goal weight kind of area. I don't hate my body anymore. And then I get complacent. So as long as I catch myself now and do exactly what you're saying and kind of reset over the next few days, maybe when I go back to work on Thursday, because remember, I've been at uni for a week, home learning, it will be fine.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really brilliant place to be in right now, is knowing that, let's just say, for example, you had in your head set your boundary for, as of today, you're going to be back into your normal system. And probably similar for you, Emma, you know, you might have thought, right, you know, bank holidays been and gone, back into my routine, and then you end up going out and end up kind of that, and then escalates a little bit, or you've got something left over. You know, it doesn't have to be all done in a short period of time. If you then want to start factoring that into your day-to-day routine, you know, you can still kind of apply that 80-20 rule that I talk about so frequently, and it's absolutely fine. But I think what I'm talking about really in terms of like the big indulgences is, let's just say you don't track for 3 or 4 days and kind of anything goes, then getting back into your system. But just like you said there, Kate, if you catching yourself now at a point where you know this is where things usually go south for me, then the only way really now is to move on from this and obviously learn from that moment, and that's what will make the biggest difference for you long term.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Sarah, I know that you jumped on a little bit later, but I was just kind of going around finding out how everyone's Easter weekend went. You know, was there lots of indulgence that you weren't expecting, or probably had anticipated but then maybe felt guilty for afterwards? I know that we've had a quick catch up anyway, but jump in if you want to, or you know, if you want to discuss it later, that's fine too.
Yeah, hi everybody. Sorry, I've got the 2 kids and didn't realise the time. Let me try and find somewhere quiet away from them.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, because I was doing quite, I suppose, well. I felt like my habits were going well. I felt just like better in myself. I didn't really want to like indulge over Easter, but then I remembered back to a few years ago when I was on the, you know, Weight Watchers and like didn't eat anything bad over a Christmas time, and it hit January and all the people came back to Weight Watchers and they'd like put on 5 pounds or whatever it was, and then they all lost it in that sort of early January time, and I was just still resenting that I hadn't had anything at Christmas. Like, for me it had pushed me to my limit, so by the time I hit January I was like, well, I've been so good, I just can't handle this anymore, and then like indulged for like, I don't know how long it was for, like a long time. So I've kind of learned that even though I had these intentions, actually those are they're not the best for like my lifestyle, because I know that I then regret it. So I kind of didn't go into the Easter weekend thinking I'm just going to go off track, but I did. And I'm just kind of like, okay, cool. And now I'm moving on with getting back into it. There's not really like, I'm not really reflecting on it much, to be honest, which is unusual for me, who overanalyzes everything. But, you know, I feel like I've been back on it today and I feel like I've had my fill, and now I'm going to move on back to where I was at.
Perfect. Cool. Yeah, that sounds, I think, you know, I kind of just mentioned that just a second ago, and use that as an example where if you fight that urge to have something because you feel like I need to be good, eventually it will, you know, it'll kind of take over. And just like you said, end up then, instead of spending a week enjoying the experience, you are doing it on your own for a much more prolonged period of time, which obviously doesn't help you get the results that you want. So obviously, being through that, kind of getting your different perspectives on, you know, how you dealt with the weekend, I think this is still going to be very beneficial to a lot of you, whether that's right now or whether that's at some point in the future. So maybe this is one that you do want to save, because inevitably these moments will crop up again, whether it's, like I say, Easter, birthdays, Christmas, spontaneous events, all those sorts of things. And this is what I personally do to kind of get myself back into a good system. So how to move on and bounce back from an indulgent weekend, basically kind of leaving food remorse behind, because anytime you have that overwhelming feeling of guilt, it really does just take away from the experience. And obviously we want to enjoy socializing and that to be part of our lives. So rather than, you know, saying I need to wipe the slate clean, I need to kind of gut my house of all things that might be a temptation or might make me overeat, we need to go through this process. And that is, so I wanted to actually kind of walk you through the 3 stages really of indulgence and food guilt, and how it can actually creep up on us when we might go into it with the best intentions. Because I think, you know, a couple of you have said as well that we've all spoken about it. We spoke about it, we planned it beforehand for most of you. Some people just basically had a couple of days off tracking because they know that they're fully compliant the rest of the time, maybe at different stages throughout the process where, you know, you're not necessarily actively pursuing fat loss right now. And it's more about kind of building a better relationship with food, and that worked better. But for some of you, it might be a case of we've actually factored it into your calories already. So this is how I see it. Like, there is 3 stages of indulgences and food guilt. There is the anticipation of what's to come. So whether it's Christmas, whether it's Easter, birthdays, whatever, you know, you're looking forward to something. You're looking forward to letting your guard down and being able to enjoy. And there is, right, I've got a plan. I know what I'm doing. I know how to factor in my food calories, or I'm not going to do it at all. Enjoying it still, like, these feelings are very much, you know, enjoyed. But then there comes the reality of what that indulgence means. And then we have things like today, where it's a Tuesday after a bank holiday, might have had a lovely 4-day weekend for some of you. Some of you might have been busy, but nonetheless will have kind of felt that vibe of, right, it's time to kind of slow down, first rest really after Christmas time. And now you're feeling remorseful of having food, or guilty because you've eaten too much, or maybe you're feeling a little bit bloated today, maybe you're feeling sluggish, maybe you're feeling a little bit puffy, or, you know, you don't have the energy that you had. But it doesn't mean that we can't get it back. It just means that that's the lagging effect of having a little bit more fun, which is why you don't do it all the time. But when you do it, you can appreciate it all the more. And I think that this feeling today, for a lot of you, I know Jen, you already mentioned that you are hypersensitive to certain foods, which is why you appreciate feeling good so much, and you appreciate, like, your system, because you get to feel and show up as your best every day, which makes you a happier person, nicer to be around, and so much more than that. That the indulgences, you might be questioning today, was it worth it? But only you get to decide that. You know, this is something that is very individual, but for a lot of people, unless you literally are quite happy to live within, you know, certain parameters all the time, you're going to want to be able to have some food variety and let your guard down. So it's important that while this might be like, these might be the 3 stages of indulgence and food guilt, it doesn't have to be like that, but we do have to learn to not look back, because we're not going that way. We're moving forward from this point. So these are the 4 things that I personally do, and I would encourage you to do, kind of moving forward from this stage. Now, the first thing is to, like, this is your, I put this here as, this is your default plan of action for when you have those moments, or, like I say, it doesn't have to be a significant event like Christmas or Easter. It could just be a nice summer afternoon where you've gone into town, whether, you know, you might have gone for a weekend break or a trip away or a holiday or something like that. And a spontaneous event has taken you to an Italian restaurant. I say that because I love Italian. You maybe have had a glass of wine and then the next day woken up feeling like bloated, slightly hungover if you're like me, and wondering, does that to you? And you know, you might be feeling slightly guilty for actually doing that, but in that moment it felt right. It felt like something that, you know, you're enjoying the experience. So from there, what do you do? Now, it would feel natural to say, right, diet's got to be super clean, back to training really hard, you know, I'm going to up my steps this week and just kind of push on from here, because you have that increased level of motivation from perhaps having a little bit of a break. But the reality is, you don't need to do that at all. And like, your body is such a, you know, it's so incredible that it will be fighting to get you back to set point. Because as much as in your brain you might be thinking, I hate looking and feeling like this, your body's also crying out for help. You know, it wants to get you back to set point. And that doesn't mean that you need to go and, like I say, slash your calories to make up for it, plan in extra training sessions, because you will eventually lead to burnout, and that might happen in the next 2 to 3 days. So it's super important that at this stage you come back to wanting to respect your body. And you might feel like you've abused your body by indulging in too much food or alcohol or whatever, but actually the how you respond to that, like cutting your calories super low, planning extra training sessions and so on, that's abusing your body more, because now it's fighting to get you back to set point. And what I mean by that is how you feel like when you wake up every day, when you know you've eaten really well, or eaten in a way that supports your goals, let's just say, it's probably better term there, that's how your body feels at a set point where you feel comfortable, you feel happy. And that's what we want to get you back to. So it's important at this stage that you respect your body and you respect the process. And if you're feeling sluggish and inflamed and maybe tired, that you don't have to get back into super intense workouts if that's your thing. You don't have to get back into lifting some weights if that's your thing. You can just go for a walk. Like, you can just do some light movement. Maybe it's literally spending 40 minutes, maybe you spend 40 minutes exercising. Maybe on this day it's about just doing some more mobility, getting your joints moving, like getting some blood flow, something that's not super intense. And if you do that on the first day, then you get to gauge it the next day. How's my body feeling today? Do I feel like I'm getting back to what I would call set point? If you feel a bit better, then you can push the intensity again. But there is no rule book that says you have to do this, this, and this, following some slightly, some maybe like deviating from what you typically eat on a normal day. So it's about listening to your body, how you feel at that time. And if you feel terrible, it's not, how do I get myself back to where I felt as quick as possible? It's accepting that this might take a couple of days and that's okay. Make sense? Yeah. Because this is typically what a lot of people will do. Feel the guilt and think, how do I change this really quickly? What do I need to do that's extreme? And that's obviously what we're trying to avoid. So the second thing is to refuel. Now, this might sound counterintuitive because obviously if you have been out and about, maybe you have been consuming way more calories than you typically do on a normal day. You might be thinking, I'm not hungry, or you might be overfull, feeling bloated. Like I say, you might be feeling really puffy. So do you pull your food back? Do you cut your carbs? Do you cut your fats? And the answer is no, because at the same time as your body's trying to recover, like I say, your body's trying to get you back to set point, it still needs fuel to get you to that point. Now, to kind of put things into perspective as well, I think, you probably will have all seen the numbers on this before when in one of my coaching calls, or kind of throughout the process of getting to know one another, maybe before we work together. But to gain 1 pound of body fat, you need to eat 3,500 calories in a surplus. So for most of you, let's just say, for example, your maintenance calories, I'll say this for easy maths, is 2,000 calories. You would need to eat 5,500 calories in one day to gain 1 pound of body fat. Now, for a lot of you, if you're eating super calorie dense foods, yes, say for example, like Easter eggs, kind of Christmas food, might be possible on one day. But the next day, the knock-on effect of that is going to be that your hunger response is just going to be way down. So you're probably not going to eat as much the next day. So actually, if you gain 2 kilos from an indulgent weekend, the chances are it's water retention. It's probably because of the fact that you had a lot more salt in the type of food that you've been having, probably inflammation. So it's not definitely going to be body fat gain, which is why we know that by getting back into your normal habits, eating your normal food, getting back to what your body functions on optimally. So for a lot of you, you will be aware of your calorie needs right now to kind of reach your goals and sustain your goals. It's just a case of getting back to those numbers. So no less. I wouldn't cut them any less. It's not a case of we need to make up for this, especially if you don't have any awareness of your quantities. So if you haven't tracked and anything's gone, you have no data to use to say, this is what I need to eat fewer amounts of. It literally is a case of get back to your consistent deficit, do that every day, eat your normal food. Yes, it might take you another 2 weeks to get back to where you were prior to, let's just say, that Easter weekend, but that's okay, because you're going to continue to do that, rinse and repeat the process, and you'll still get where you want to be. It might just take you a little bit longer, but literally for the sake of a couple of weeks, but you've been able to enjoy the process, include your favorite things throughout the process, and also maintain a healthy relationship with food. Make sense? Hopefully it's a yes, but I know you're all on mute. Yeah. All good. Then the next thing is to rehydrate. Now, rehydration is going to be very important, especially after you have had higher volumes of calories. Now, the main reason for this is that if you, for example, eat 1,500 calories every day or 2,000 calories every day. You spent a couple of days eating 3,000 to 4,000 unknowingly, which is very easy. Those might seem like very alarming numbers, but when you start to tot up alcohol or high, like calorie dense foods, it's very easy to get to that point. Then obviously your digestive system is now going to be under a significant amount more stress. So hydration is definitely going to help to flush things out, get things moving properly, and also it's going to help to minimize your cravings following having more calorie dense and sugary foods. Making sure that you are hydrated is obviously going to help to support that. Plus, when you do overconsume foods, it's very unlikely that you're going to be drinking lots of water alongside that too, because obviously the food is going to be very filling, which is obviously going to disguise the fact that you might be thirsty. So, especially if you've had alcohol as well, rehydration is super important. Now, I would say after an indulgent weekend, if there's any kind of two things that I would be super focused on, not one of them is not cutting calories, absolutely not. It would be making sure that I'm rehydrating and then making sure I'm getting in enough vegetables, because those two things are really going to support getting back into consistent routines with food, helping minimize those cravings. Because if you're anything like me, as in, if you are quite a typical human being and you don't consistently eat things like chocolate, like whatever it might be, mince pies for Christmas, whatever, you might find that you've got the taste for that and you want more of that. So to get back into, the place where that you don't necessarily crave it and you're quite happy to live without it, these are two things that I would do. Make sure that I'm drinking enough water and eating vegetables at every meal. So they would be two focus points. Then, last but not least, is to recover. Now, the quickest way to get your body back to set point is through allowing it time to recover. So go a little bit slower if you need to. Go for a walk instead of a run if you feel sluggish or inflamed, or your joints hurt because you might be a couple of pounds heavier, and get a good quality night's sleep. Now, you might be thinking this seems very counterintuitive because I want to get back to my exercise. I want to get back to dieting really hard. But just as I said in the very beginning, if you have consumed higher volumes of food than you do on a typical day, there is going to be an inflammatory response, and that can make you feel sluggish and bloated. So give yourself the opportunity just to get back to set point without adding more stress, because as much as you might have relaxed, kind of let your guard down with your food, your body's still under stress when you're eating higher volumes of food. So give yourself the time to just let that pass for the sake of 3 to 5 to 7 days of just kind of going through the motions, slowly getting back into normal habits. It will be worth it, because much the same as Sarah said, that when you deprive yourself of something, you want it all the more. It's the same here. Like, if you don't give your body the chance to recover, the process just takes longer. Make sense? And then final part is, just as I said before, whatever you've done, like whatever you've eaten, whatever you've drunk, you don't need to dwell on that, because it's done now. We can't change it. It's happened. And now you're moving forward. And that's what we have to remember, that it's such wasted energy to beat yourself up for having a little bit too much chocolate if you feel terrible for it today. Maybe having another drink if you feel terrible for it today, because it's done. We can't change it. But what you can do is change the way that you approach, the next meal. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It can be, what are you going to do next? Make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Any questions on any of that, or was that helpful? I'll start with you, Emma, seeing as though you were off mute already.
Yeah, because I typically started looking at ways to reduce my carbs.
Yeah.
And I was playing around with recipes, so I found a nice coronation chicken recipe, but I just served it with loads of rocket with some almonds on it.
Yeah.
So I've completely gone, against what you've just said there. So that's quite interesting, because that's kind of maybe how I've always dealt with it. So no, that's good. That's really good advice.
That's interesting though, Emma, because I think you're walking a lot as well, so you are burning a lot of energy throughout the week, and obviously we know that for the kind of exercise that you are doing, you are going to be using carbohydrates as your fuel. So while taking them out today, tomorrow, the next day, you might see the scale drop significantly, because when we consume carbohydrates, we are storing glycogen, and for every gram of glycogen that we store, we're storing a gram of water. So there is going to be water weight loss, there's going to be glycogen loss, but at the same time, like, this is why it's such a vicious cycle when people cut out the carbohydrates, because while yes, the scale weight will drop really quickly, you might feel lighter. You'll also be depleted of energy, so therefore when you start eating again, it jumps back on, and because you're deprived of energy, it's very likely that you'll consume more of it. So I would say, if there is, if that's something that you feel like is going to help you get back to your set point quicker, I would think about then perhaps swapping the carbohydrate choices. So instead, let's just say you have a lot of bread, maybe swapping that for something like quinoa, or something that's going to be easier to digest. Maybe if you have wraps, swapping that for something like say quinoa, bulgur wheat, rice, something that's going to be easier on your digestive system, as opposed to completely removing them entirely.
Yeah. No, that would suit me better, actually, because like I say, my family had a jack of potato with the coronation chicken in, and I just had the salad with it.
Yeah.
And it was tasty, but yeah, I was feeling a bit sort of like, ugh.
But that's the thing, you might not feel it straight away, because like I say, if you have had more food, then your hunger response might be down anyway, or your hunger signals might be down anyway. So it's not a case of I'm hungry for all of this, but at the same time, if you're half an hour later, an hour later, looking around the kitchen for what can I have to keep me going, what can I have, like, or perhaps you might have, this is quite a common one as well, when people cut out carbohydrates, they're really unsatisfied at the end of the meal, so therefore you might have cut out 150 calories from taking away some carbs, but you end up eating 200 from just snacking on things throughout the day. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's definitely about finding a balance. So yeah, don't cut out your carbs this week. Just go back to the process, go back to the plan, stick with the process.
Yeah.
All right. Jen, I know that this is something that you had said more about, really the guilt. Like, how did you find that? Was that something that resonated with you, or anything that you kind of can take away from there and use?
Like it's been good today. I felt better today, just and on all I've done, and sort of consciously was good, right, I want to eat like what I normally eat. I've not done anything different. And in fact, I've not really done a workout today, but I did quite a bit yesterday. I've been for two little walks at lunch and after work, and I'm just gonna have a really sort of lazy day, but really basic with my food, and like just chicken and rice and some vegetables and see. And I think for me it'll be interesting. Like, I'm just going to see how the next couple of days go. I think this is the first time, like, having been on the plan and been feeling so good, that have had a weekend like this. So I think this is like, it's like a learning. It's like for the first time, it's like learning how my body deals with it, and knowing that within a couple of days I can get back to that. It's not ruined it. I'm not going to feel like this forever again, or so I'm hoping that it get, like, just eating normally, like how I now normally eat, is going to get me sort of feeling better in a couple of days. And then next time it happens, like, nope, fine, because last time it took me a couple of days, and then I'm on this, and then I'm hoping that, like, psychologically doing this, right, yeah. And actually I'm thinking today, like, I must drink some, and like you've said it again, I know I've not drunk enough today or over the last few days. So
yeah, exactly. And I think that's
so you should just reinforce that and give it a bit of time. And
yeah, it's about building confidence, isn't it? It's about trusting your body. That's what this is really about. Not, your brain jumping in first of all and saying, we need to do this, we need to change this, we need to make drastic measures just to get back to there. It's a case of trust the process. The process got you to where you are right now, and it'll continue to do that. This is just something that you wanted to enjoy, and that's built into the plan. So that's your default now. You've set your foundational habits, you just have to trust them.
And I think I say it felt so good this morning to be like, right, normal breakfast and normal lunch and a normal tea, and I'm like, yay.
Yeah.
So, but I don't want to get so reliant on that I can't enjoy these things. So I think for me, almost it's. But I think I'm hoping that, knowing that does sort it out, that next time I will be able to enjoy it a little bit more and let go a little bit more, and not be quite so conscious. I don't know. I think that's my bit. Like,
being conscious of it, you mean?
Yeah, like not feeling guilty at the time, or like just afterwards, and then I don't know. Yeah,
like
not
I
really
say,
explaining it very well.
I think that, well, in terms of feeling guilty at the time, or feeling like I shouldn't be doing this, that if you can go through this process, know that you can enjoy those things and get back to set point within a couple of days, that will give you that confidence. You know, you're kind of just not at that point just yet. I'd say probably this time next week.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Kate, anything that kind of resonated with you there, or anything that in fact you might have dealt with differently or the same?
No, well, everything everyone said in this chat has kind of resonated with me, really. I think I looked at the MyFitnessPal, and I looked at the Trainerize app, and looked at my weight, and I thought, bloody hell, like 6th of April, like 6th of March, I was exactly the same weight, but I fluctuate so much. But if I kind of thought to myself how far I've come, because I don't have a scale or a list to look at about my mindset, and how much it doesn't bother me anymore if I do. You know, when I had that Chinese the other day, I just didn't care. I was just so mature about it in my mind. So I think I'll be fine. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also as well, you know, for you to be able to you have a different perspective now with being able to look at let's just say the scale weight, because that's really our kind of data point. But yes, to be able to look at all the other things as well that are better for you right now. But at the same time, your life changes frequently, doesn't it? You know, with your shift pattern. Say last week, your activity was way down because you had essays. So it's being able to put that kind of stuff into perspective as well. Know that that's just a phase. It's not going to stay like, if you lived your life every single day sitting at your computer having Chinese every night, you know that the outcome would be very different. And you would then, you know, at some point you would get to a point where you cared about those things. But I think that just is a really healthy mindset to be in right now, knowing that you can have a takeaway, you can go through like all these kind of situations, whether it's Easter, Christmas, whatever, and know that you're confident in the foundations that you have set to get you back to where you want to be. And time will get you there. It's just not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then I'll come to you anyway, Sarah, but I know that you're probably quite, you know, you're kind of in a good place right now. But anything else that in fact you might even add to that?
I think it's really valuable is that being patient. I don't have that. I'm like all or nothing. So I want to be like all back in, like I think Emma said, like looking for ways to kind of cut corners to get back in with this. But actually, you know, I've eaten a lot, so there's just no point looking back and trying to make those changes now. So just go with it. Water's a really good idea. I'm going to put the kids to bed and have loads of water. But yeah, no, I feel pretty good about it all, but it was really useful to hear all of those points, so thank you for sharing them.
Brilliant, no worries. So what I'm going to do is upload this video into YouTube anyway, and I'll send you the link just after, because like I say, this might be one that right now it might have been like a bit of a light bulb moment, but at the same time, you know, kind of the 4 things, like the 4 R's to remember, are something that you can come back to in the future. And you might not do things like specifically as we said today, but just remembering that you need to respect your body and where it's at, refuel, as opposed to what can I take away, it's what can I add in. You know, that's kind of the concept of this whole process really, is rather than taking away food and saying you can't have this, you can't have that, it's what can we add in to make the process easier for you. So things like, you know, making sure you're eating enough protein, veggies, all that kind of stuff, all that kind of good stuff. Then rehydrating, because that's a big one. That's one that we really do underestimate. And then obviously giving yourself time to recover. But like I say, I will get this uploaded into YouTube and you can revisit in the future if you want to. But if you've got any other questions or you want to kind of have a chat about it one-on-one, just drop me a message anyway. And we can kind of get a bit of an individual plan of action together for you if you need it. Sound good?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. You're welcome.
Yeah, it's great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Laura.
Enjoy your evening, ladies, and we will catch up again next week.
Thanks
Andrew,
now.
cheers.
Speak to you later.
Yeah, speak soon. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.